to the great communicator, which is God. Back in 2012, which was the first year that I was here, was in October, because of listening to Spirit about what to talk about, I gave a talk called What is Spirituality, or Real Spirituality. And a couple of years after that talk was given, I wrote an article. I had to change it because there's a lot of difference between a talk and an article to write. And it was published in the Epic magazine in 2014, March or April of that year. And it actually brought one of our members to this church. Okay. That article brought Cynthia to our church because she read it and really loved about it and has been here ever since. And then we recorded it on the CD and we handed out at the whole expo, and it's part of the package that we have for guests that come. But about a week or so ago, Jerry mentioned to me she would like to hear that again because it might entice or bring up things that she needed to know more of. And on top of that, we've had a lot of new people have come here since 2012 that might need to hear it as well. So here we go. First of all, when people are described as being really religious, it does not necessarily mean they are spiritual, even though they like to use that word. The meaning of those two words, religious and spiritual, can be exceedingly different, especially when depicting how people live their lives, and also when used as a gauge of how divinely centered and aware that they are within themselves. Secondly, when stating that a person is religious, it generally means that they follow a certain religion. They may not, in fact, be applying the specific practices, but only claiming membership because of family or choice of birth parents. In addition, any person may attend a church or a temple, but that does not mean in and of itself that they are religious. If the motivation is other than for religious purposes, such as a need for social contact or commercial contact, trying to give business cards out and doing that, which happens a lot. People may attend a religious service or activity on a regular basis, but if they do not practice those beliefs in their real life, in fact, they are not religious or even spiritual. A person who is spiritual has a close inner relationship with God, which is the beginning of the oneness that I talk about here so often. It's also because they've generally sought out God without the backdrop of a religion telling them to pursue God. Thank you. Because they are seeking the spiritual truth or God or both. This is not to say that a person who attends a particular religion cannot find God or real spirituality. And when this happens, it's not normally because of a certain religion, but in spite of it. It is that one's soul is ready to experience real spirituality. So what is that? We define real spirituality is obtained when God is ready to be revealed to the soul and to the mind. Real spirituality comes about not due to obsessive adherence to a particular religion, but rather due to that person's love and pursuit of God's presence and truth. Take that in for yourself. Which again is initiated by one's soul and heart without the need for religious indoctrination, but rather this God's presence and truth. And that's what brought all of you here. I'm looking more for God's presence and truth within myself. Is that not true? So, real spirituality is found more often in books and teachings that deal with mysticism. Another word that we want to look at in spirituality. Mysticism is that oneness with God. Jesus was a mystic. When you really get connected to experiencing God totally in your body. And actually, mysticism is at the very heart of most, if not all, teachings, since they all come from the same source anyway. We just, over time, have looked at it slightly different. But even though it comes from God or source, by the time it reaches the understanding of theologians and church laymen, without the benefit of that real mystical experience, it becomes dogma or intellectualized theology. The spirit or core of truth of real spirituality is thus lost in the shuffle of this intellectualized theologies. It is no wonder then that by the time this so-called truth that came from higher source is spoken to the adherents of a particular religion, it is but a shadow version of the light that it really was and truly is. If we were to assemble together real mystics of all the major spiritual groups, they would find harmony with each other because of experiencing the oneness. But on the other side, if you bring intellectual theologians together of the same religions, heated debate would probably ensure, because each one of them would want to fight who's the right one. That's not what we do here. Many so-called religious people often defend their religion with fanatical fervor. Theirs, they proclaim, as the only and right religion, the only and right source. And apart from religious brainwashing to stimulate their zeal, they are defensive because they've become identified. Their own personal sense of identity is with this religion. Most of this do this not on solid footing in their own psyche, and thus they need the emotional identity to anchor, and that's what the dogmatic religions provide. Someone to follow as a guru, someone to feel like I'm really connected to something. That's an important point to look at. In other words, people are lacking in their own self-worth, and so they look for something outside of themselves rather than seeking God within. Now, that doesn't mean that those people, all of you that are here, or those that are in New Thought, don't suffer from low self-esteem. I believe that all of us in some way do, because we don't have the total oneness with God that we're experiencing or wanting to have here in our life. And we don't experience that love of God, or God's love for us that we could. So we all experience it, but we come here and we're learning more about that. On the other hand, a really spiritual person finds their sense of identity in the inner mystical revelation and awareness of their oneness with soul, with God's Spirit. Isn't that what we talk about here? This is what this teaching is about, is to connect to one with God's mind and heart and soul. A truly spiritual person recognizes that the real spirituality is the innate, inborn presence of God with all human beings, whether they're aware of it or not. That's what we talk about too, that our soul came from God and is in this physical body. We recognize that real spirituality is not the exclusive domain of any one religion, regardless of how vast or supreme it may appear to its followers. The pomp and circumstance of religious glitz may be impressive for some mystically unaware, but it does not serve to awaken real spirituality in people. In fact, it may do the opposite. It may sidetrack people from finding God's presence and spiritual truth that's within them, as they are too busy and otherwise preoccupied with the outer religion that keeps them focused on the religious religion and its hierarchical biblical heroes, rather than seeking, as God said, the kingdom of heaven within, which is what we want to do here. Not outwardly, but remember, everything starts within. This is why what I'm talking about here, that most people see God as judgmental, believing the idea that somehow they were born in sin, they have to be reborn in Jesus' eyes to have a change of heaven somewhere out there, and then everything will be okay. Think about that. How many people do you know that have that sort of belief in their lives? Those who are really spiritual recognize that there is not one true religion. All religions exist for a purpose. They are all about bringing individuals to God, because all paths came from God and lead back to source. Spiritual people recognize that there are different religions, so that each person may adhere to whatever that religion is based upon their own awareness, or their lack thereof, of themselves, their life, of others, and of God. Therefore, those of us who are in the really spiritual aspect of ourselves recognize that we have no right to be in judgment of others because of that. They can have whatever religion they can. It's important to them. But one thing this statement says is that our interpretation about God is based upon our thoughts about ourselves. We look at everything around us, including God or source, based upon our own thoughts. That's why many people over time have thought, and still do, that God was this judgmental, angry being, because that's the thoughts they had about themselves, and it was projected out. They had their own belief of separation within themselves, their own belief of being wrong within themselves, when in fact, what is God? Love, and all aspects of love. That's what we want to look at within ourselves. So there are religions that cater, therefore, to the illiterate, the emotionally insecure or unstable, the intellectual, even the theologically pompous people, as well as those in prison, at a bar, rodeo. I've seen people who are out there practicing religion in all of those areas and most of it's about being saved by Jesus, which is, again, when we look at this, that again is an outer thing, that somehow they're putting all their faith in the belief in this being called Jesus. Here, we know that Jesus was a teacher for us, so we look at inside of ourselves. How are we taking his teachings? A really spiritual person sees right through the maze of all the religions of the world to the heart of the matter, which is within them. Real spirituality is when the soul is free to be one with God, beyond the need for any particular religion, or even the need to appear religious, because God is within all human beings. There is no place where God is not. There is a need for all of us to finally connect to that and let it rise up to the conscious mind, because we need to know we're on a soul's journey through eternity, pursuing God within ourselves, understanding it more, living it more, practicing it more. Different religions exist for various stages of such a pursuit. Real spirituality comes about to all of us as a result of hearing and seeing God's light within us, rather than being in need of a religion outside of ourselves as an exclusive thing for us, or as a substitute even. Real spirituality is not based on being able to impressively quote the Bible chapter and verse, and there's a lot of people that believe that. They say it without even understanding what it is they're talking about. But I'm connected to the religion. I can tell you this and this and this. I know a few people that are that way. Indeed, it is based upon letting God and truth speak through each one yourself without the benefit of a religious authority. We go right to God. We don't have to follow this person or this person. Even for me, I've told you here that one of these days you're going to be at the point where you won't need me as the minister, because all of us will have that one connection with God. That's what we're working on. Real spirituality is being a channel for God, standing on the authority of God's presence within. And this God's presence is seen as a lifestyle instead of a lot of Bible thumping, religious competing with others as who's the best preacher, which is why I don't like that word for me. Please don't call me preacher, because it's like preaching out to the world. I'd rather minister to everybody. I've always said that new thought and spirituality is a way of being. It's not necessarily doing. It has to start within. And these are God-initiated words of wisdom within. Gradually, over periods of time and many lifetimes, souls start to come into real spirituality, into that connection to the presence of God. So to show you that it can happen, let me share this story called Can I Borrow $25? A man came home from work late, tired and irritated, to find his 5-year-old son waiting for him at the door. The child said, "Daddy, may I ask you a question?" "Yes, son, what is it?" "How much do you make an hour?" "That's none of your business. Why do you ask such a thing?" the man said angrily. "I just want to know. Please tell me, how much do you make an hour?" "Well, if you must know, I make $50 an hour." The son said, "Oh," and he replied with his head down. Then he said, "Daddy, could I borrow $25? The father was furious. "If the only reason you ask that is so you can borrow some money to buy a silly toy or other nonsense, then march yourself straight to your room and go to bed. Think about why you're being so selfish. I don't work hard every day for such childish frivolities." The little boy quietly went to his room and shut the door. The man sat down and started to get even angry when he thought more about this stupid question. How dare he ask such questions, only to get money from me? But after about an hour or so, he calmed down, started to think, maybe there was something he really needed to buy with the $25, and he didn't ask for money very often. So the father went to the door of the little boy's room and opened it. "Are you asleep, son?" he asked. "No, Daddy, I'm awake." "I've been thinking, maybe I was too hard on you earlier," said the father. "It's been a long day, and I took my aggravation out on you. Here's the $25 you asked for." The little boy sat up smiling. "Oh, thank you, Daddy," he yelled, and then reaching under his pillow, he pulled out some other crumpled bills. The man saw the boy already had money, started to get angry again. So the little boy was counting on his money and looked at his father. What do you want more money if you already have something to hear? The father grumbled. Because I don't have enough, but now I do, the little boy replied. Daddy, I have $50 now. Can I buy an hour of your time? Please come home early tomorrow. I would like to have dinner with you. The father was crushed. He put his arms around the little son and he begged his forgiveness. So did you feel the energy of that? Connecting with source inside. And it's a short reminder, first of all, that a lot of people get into working so hard in their life that they let time go with their families. We should not let it shift through our fingers without having spent some time with those that really matter to us, those close to our hearts. Remember to share that $50 worth of your time with someone that you love. If we died tomorrow, the company that we're working for could easily replace you, right? It doesn't matter, but it's the family and the friends that you leave behind that will fill the loss. But the second reminder of this story is that our Heavenly Father also wants us to spend time with Him and her. But we say we're too busy, we don't have the time, and we put the false gods of time and money in front of us. So it's time, as in the class that I teach here called Practicing the Presence, to start doing that more. Being spiritual and living spiritual is a lot more than just stating the words or thinking that you are. As expressed in the title of some of my past talks, it's called Practicing the Presence. Actually practicing it so you get it as a part of you. There is love and there is truth for our lives. It's about living it every moment of the day to the best of our ability and seeing in the places in our life where we need to practice it more. But I have to tell you, it's not that easy. It's easy for other people to get caught in stuff outside. Tell me how to be. Tell me what to do. Go to the confession. Go do this. Go do that. Rather than learning how to really take it inside and be really spiritual and practice the presence of God. It's easy to say, I follow a certain religion. I'm Christian, I'm Jewish, I'm this or that. Or I'm a spiritual peacemaker, or I'm a member of Fellowship of Spirit, or I'm a member of this. But again, if you're not applying the principles of the belief by claiming membership, because you're still living in ego fear, old judgments about themselves, then you end up projecting it all onto others. But here, I would define it this way. We have generally sought out God within, without the backdrop of a religion telling us to pursue God, but rather because each and every one of you chose to be here to seek spiritual truth, to seek God within, or both. Think about that for yourselves and what brought you here. Real spirituality is obtained when God is ready to be revealed to the soul, to the mind, to the heart, to the body, all right in here. Because this is where God is at. This is why I believe that I'm here now and why you're here now, because God is teaching through me all these aspects of spirituality, including the four bodies, the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual, and how we can learn to live those more, and how we can move into ascension and rise within ourselves. Real spirituality comes about by opening up and receiving God in all aspects of our life. So beloveds, that's what we're doing here, is open ourselves up, receive God that's already within us. It does not work to be in a spiritual group, whether it be fellowship, and to say I'm a member, I do my prayers, I read my books, and yet then go out in the world and carry anger projected onto others, start through gossip or negative comments. Real spirituality comes about not due to obsessive adherence to things outside of yourself, but rather to your own love and your own pursuit of God's presence and truth within you. Not through doing what one thinks is the right practice, but actually being that spiritual person. And to know that we have to deal with our egos or others. It is easy for us to project our stuff out onto others. It came up in the prayer group today and talking about judgment. And if we have not done the work on our past pains or our wounds inside, it's really easy to attract ourselves upsets and judgments and gossip and blame because of all these old beliefs and buttons that we're carrying around. And when we do it, they stop us from being totally open to God's presence that's within us. When we feel that we've been wronged through gossip and blame and attack, it's easy for us to want to get our pound of flesh back from somebody else, to even prove how wrong they were, right? We end up getting in who's right, who's wrong sort of thing. But it's much harder to practice the presence. Every moment of the day, to just practice it, to seek God's presence and higher truth. That is real spirituality. If you wanted to take the whole talk into one line, I am here to practice the presence, to seek God's presence and higher truth within me. I am living spirituality. It is much harder to go to the grace inside the wound, but that's what we need to do. Because we're used to the ego running our lives. And that is how a lot of people consider themselves religious, but not spiritual. So let's close this out by saying a prayer. Divine Mind, my Creator, whose spirit and light live within me, I affirm and declare that being really spiritual is made possible by your grace and love. I humble my personal selfhood that I may be worthy of living a really strongly spiritual life. I give thanks for it, and so it is. Namaste. So any